Hi, Sam. Welcome to Defying Gravity. You're the founder and still CEO of Ansarada, an app that, or a software that actually I use and one of the companies I work with. Will you just tell us, for those who don't know Ansarada, a little bit about what you do? What do you love about it? Just give us a bit of the story.
Sure. Well, thanks, Helen, for having me on.
Pleasure.
Uh, Look, we're probably known for mostly for the first product we built, but we actually deal with critical information and processes that have to be secure and structured and usually involve a lot of collaboration between parties. And the environments where our products used is sometimes described as high risk and low trust. So, you know, you're probably wondering what I'm talking about at this point, but if you think about mergers and acquisitions, that's where Ansarada started with a product to facilitate the exchange of information between the seller and their advisors and all of the bidders. So some of those bidders can be the closest competitor to the seller. So there's a lot of risk disclosing due diligence information. So it has to be protected with rights management and security and a lot of granular permissions, who can see what. And then there's a lot of collaboration that happens in due diligence with questions that get asked from experts on HR or finance or operations. And you might have 5 bidders, so you've got hundreds of questions coming in on different topics, and you want to route them to people workflow to answer them. And the CFO approves the answers and the lawyers, and then they get disclosed. And then at the end of a deal, everyone represents and warrants that everything disclosed was accurate. And, the audit trails and those records in our product act as that proof of disclosure. So, that's where we get used anywhere from Series A capital raising, doing due diligence on capital raising, all the way up to like tens of billions of dollars where, it could be BHP level deals on M&A. And we did that for years. So we developed a capability around understanding where risks are being taken, where's repetitive manual work happening, where's their data that, if it was surfaced or looked at, could help with decision making. And then we got involved in tendering and procurement of large projects like infrastructure, roads, port, rail, hospitals, precinct renewal and football stadiums, and where a lot of public money is going in to develop something. It's got to be fair and equitable, but there's a lot of disclosure to potential tenderers that then do their due diligence, and they ask questions so they can put in a bid to build the road or the school or the port or the airport or whatever, or the battery renewable project. And then they put in their response, but then the government evaluates all of those bids, and then they ask them questions, and then they get the answers back, and all of that goes towards forming a contract. But the probity, the fairness, the audit trails, our products use, they're very valuable. But we broadened out in the last few years into governance, risk, and compliance, because when we got to know a lot of the companies, not the lawyers, bankers, accountants, but the companies doing M&A and capital raise, and you might find this on your podcast, like as they scale up, they usually do that because they're good at their product or service that they're doing, and that's why they're scaling. But as you scale, there is a lot more formalized risk management and processes you should have. And then there's governance that's should start to be in place. And then if you start operating in multiple geographies, there's different compliance things, right? And then when you go to do a exercise that involves due diligence, quite often the gap companies have on these things would be exposed. And it can lead to them getting a suboptimal outcome on their capital raise or the sale of an asset. But also you can see that it's causing them operational difficulty, or they turn, like everyone does when they want to solve a problem, they turn to a spreadsheet, and then they eventually realize that specialized software could help them better. So we developed a passion to say, look, we're good at like where there's lots of information, critical outcomes and processes that if they're structured and in order, great outcomes happen. So how can we help bring more order and structure to the SME as they're scaling, so that they're in sustainability management, risk management, compliance, governance, all these words that they hate, but they have to do can be simplified, and they can get on with what they do best. And that's what we love.
Yeah.
It's the challenges of how to help people, and how can we innovate what we do, and how can we be a good company that's a great help to our customers, like a servant, someone who you can rely on, you can trust. As you grow, we want to grow with you. We want to understand, what your business challenges are. So they're the ingredients for us to innovate and come back and say, hey, you know how you had that challenge? Our team's thought about it. We've mocked this up. We believe we could automate that part or reduce that risk. What do you think?
Yeah.
And it's just great going on that journey with customers.
Yeah, awesome. Even though I knew you started with data rooms, when you said low trust, high risk, I thought politics. So I don't know if that's an extension for you.
Well, some things get political, and I think, if you've been in larger companies and boardrooms, even like some of the decision making can revolve around the politics,
True.
or the optics, or I think people will pursue growth and innovation if they know the downside is safe. So quite often, not my natural tendency as an entrepreneur, but I've noticed a lot of people in business first want to go, okay, what could go wrong? And it's like, no, that's fine, that's fine, that's fine.
Yes.
They feel like the environment's safe, then they will open their hearts and minds up more to innovation.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Stand on solid ground and then leap, sort of.
yeah.
Yeah. No, awesome. And can you give us a sense of scale of the business? I see, recently it's been trading, you're on the ASX, it's about 200 million valuation, but how many employees, kind of how many customers, what sort of your size and shape?
Yeah, we've got about 200 staff, but they're spread across several locations. So we've got our HQ in Sydney, but we've got a great team in Ho Chi Minh City, London, Chicago, Amsterdam, and so a lot of go-to-market people around the world, and then sharing development here in Vietnam. So 200 people, but different cultures to manage, and different 24/7.
Yeah.
Probably, tracking this, 55, 60 million type revenue scale for the business. And customers, this will be a good story later, but we switched over to a freemium model where people can sign up, use our product for free. And based on my previous example, we don't charge people at all until a bidder logs in, or a third party. Or if you're using our risk and compliance products, we'll give you a trial or something. So that means we've got a lot of customers, like nearly around 10,000, and about 600,000 people use our product.
Nice.
as people in the product. And then then we count subscribers. So how many people that sign up for free then at the end of a trial or something convert to a paid subscriber? And that's where we're, around that 3,000 paid subscriber level.
Yeah, brilliant. Gosh, how far into your journey did you go freemium? 'Cause that's quite a change if you started with pure sales.
Yes, it is a big change. We started playing around with that change in around 2020 very loosely, and then got serious about it in like 2021.
Yeah, and you were founded, you're quite a bit older than that, aren't you?
Yeah, we were founded in 2006.
Right. Oh, that's a long way in. Awesome.
So some of these cool cloud words and SaaS words didn't exist when we started. Like I think the term for our products was like an ASP. It was called an application service provider.
Yeah, I remember ASP. Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Now it's called cloud, because it's an application service provided from the cloud.
Yeah.
So we were always SaaS business from
Mm.
a
Mm.
technology point of view,
Yeah.
like, multi-tenanted SaaS product. But the go-to-market approach that we had was not SaaS. And one of the big challenges for us over the years has been, how do we take this trust and credibility that we have transactionally when people do periodic, very important, but one-offy events?
Mm.
You don't do M&A every year or capital raise, but in a 5-10 year life cycle, they happen, but
Mm.
it's not like a HR product for subscription. So how do we bring into the business more of a subscription model that serves our clients' interests, not just ours? And how do we transition into more of a SaaS business model as well as a SaaS product?
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Just back to your corporate history, you listed in the ASX in 2020. What was the rationale for that? And anything you'd do differently?
Yeah, there was a couple of bits of rationale. So previously, we had raised capital using convertible notes, and that was sort of pre-IPO money, and probably another story. But the mistake I would say I made was prematurely scaling some things before they were validated, and that ended up putting us in a situation where we had our core products and a lot of technology investment that were great, but then the newer direction we wanted to go in had a lot of funding but hadn't got the growth. So the convertible notes were going to expire, so we were gearing up for an IPO to recapitalize the business, pay back the notes, get some more capital, and continue growing. And we were growing, but we had some issues to clear up. But there were valuable lessons that made the company and the culture and everything stronger. And we were just like, yep, we ready to go again. Overshot the mark there, but lesson learned. No one sunk the ship. It was shot over the bow, not below the bow. But then we were doing our roadshow in March 2020, and then that's when COVID really started moving into that lockdown period. And they said, look, you're never going to get an IPO away now.
Yeah. Wow.
And then there was still a lot of pressure from convertible note holders to resolve that, and it was quite intense. And then we looked around for options for resolving that, and we found another company much smaller than us that was listed. They had about $1 million in revenue and a bit less actually in a 20 mil market cap, but they had some complementary technology, and they were operating in a similar same space to us. So we said, look, why don't we just join up? The problem's bigger than both of us, and instead of being competitors, if we were together, we could go after the problem stronger than on our own. So we did that proposal to board investors, and then we got away with the reverse merger. Sorry, we got the reverse merger IPO away late 2020, and so we raised 45 million in capital. Balance sheet then was squeaky clean, zero debt. I think it was around 18 or 20 million cash, and off we go again. On a really good growth journey.
Nice one. And would you do it that way again? I guess COVID hopefully doesn't happen again.
Yeah, well, the COVID stuff sort of forced your options of what you could do were quite limited.
So there's how.
There's certainly things I would still change there. Perhaps we might have IPO'd on our own, given hindsight. But I mean, that's hindsight. The things I would do different is around pre-IPO funding, and particularly convertible notes, and downside scenarios, and making sure that they were handled better. And look, things I'd do differently besides the funding is make sure that customer discovery and validation was really much stronger before you invest in scaling.
Yeah, that was an intriguing thing you said before. You'd scaled too quickly on a couple. Was that because it sounds like you've got quite a few product offerings? And look, I totally get data room nailed, but it's not a multi-year thing necessarily. So you want to expand, like, to get the ARR, get that. But was it spreading yourself too thin? What was your lesson on that one?
I think a few lessons. So one on the technology side, because our data room product had, been modernized over time, but it was still 10 years old. So there was a lot of engineering passion to pursue this new product we were building on a completely new engineering approach,
Right.
which made a lot of sense. However, from the customer point of view, it was totally different UI and UX, and it was just too much change for them. And there were some things we got right really well in our data room, particularly around managing documents and permissioning and security with users. And even that got reinvented, and it's like, that wasn't broken and that wasn't key to that model, but we created additional problems that we didn't need to create. And then a lot of it too was like, it was a product that would help companies stay always on in really good structure around due diligence and integrate with their systems of record, like could be file storage or HR or finance, and then, use some AI back then to curate that information into like something that gives the board and management a lot of confidence in what they have, what they don't, and when they're doing an audit or even raising capital or doing any sort of corporate process, they could have this really highly curated corporate repository, like, in a state of readiness.
Yes.
So like a lot of what we were doing was around the timing and how hard did you go on that idea and when, and like that idea is getting stronger now, and the actual technology to do it is cheaper and faster and better than when we took it on. It was just, I think we, particularly me, got caught up in the vision around it and could see that it was such an obvious thing to do, and you invest too much in marketing and go to market before you've really validated product market fit. And product market fit is not a black and white thing. It gets shaded in progressively.
Yes.
But you shouldn't deploy large capital prematurely, and that was sort of led to us doing too many things, because then you've got a problem child that needs even more attention. And when do you cut your losses? And then that affects your culture as well, because we have to let people go. And it just sort of unraveled into like more than, like, when I say PMF and we scaled too early, it sounds like, oh, that's one lesson, but it was actually quite deep and painful, and it took years to recover from.
Yeah, amazing. And what would you do next time? Would you make it smaller increments, say, toward that vision, or what would you, if you had your time again?
Well, we do it now because our DNA, we're very innovative. So we see opportunity, we're going to want to do something about it. However, you bring in much stronger measurement of product market fit indicators, like so ranking, like, did the customer resonate with the problem? If so, how strongly? Like, would they be willing to pay for this problem to be solved? If so, what price would be too much that the problem's not that big? And and there's a lot of validation and discovery, and then a lot of lighter weight we developed a really fast ability to do high fidelity prototypes pretty quick. So to the customer, they look like the solution, but to us, they were tear away things that haven't really had a lot of investment from engineering, but they look like great products, and you can see the vision in them.
Yep.
Then we can measure the interaction there, the analytics, and then we can have more of a qualitative conversation. And these things start connecting, and you start building more stronger fit, and then it gives you the confidence to then invest in building something.
Yeah.
Then
Yeah.
once it's built, then if their customer acquisition is effective and scalable, then you can keep investing. So a lot tighter discipline on measurement, you
Yeah.
know,
Nice.
like right across design, engineering, and go to market, so that you're getting lots of traffic light signals. And if they're all green, just keep investing. But if you get a few red ones, you've got to solve them first. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so hard when you're in love with a vision, isn't it? To kind of
Yeah, well,
to even
everyone,
admit there's a red light.
yeah, that's right. If you're in love with a vision, well, if you're everyone overuses their strengths, and that's usually a blind spot. But if you're a visionary, like I would never call myself that, but people have said, "Oh, you're a visionary," and like you can overuse that strength. It's not always a
Strengths
good
are your
thing.
weaknesses and vice versa.
Yeah, it's not always
Yeah.
good.
Beautiful. Okay.
I
And look,
think
that's,
one other thing I've learned,
yeah,
especially now, is like
yeah,
surrounding yourself with people who can keep you accountable. So the board that we now have, are very accustomed to working with entrepreneurs and visionaries, and
yes,
love working with them, but they also know the right questions and the right parameters
yes,
to help you on the way. So like surrounding yourself with experienced, wise counsel
yeah,
who, primarily is going to encourage you, but secondarily they're going to, keep you accountable to the things you should and challenge
yeah,
you, and then that's good.
yeah, beautiful. So obviously your board is really adding to that, kind of helping you through those moments. What about key hires you made to kind of make those cross the chasm, as one book has called it, the kind of growing pains?
Yeah, well, I think hiring is incredibly hard because
Yeah,
you do want to hire people primarily on, culture fit for starters. Like my favorite culture strategy quote is, if those two things have a fight, culture always wins the fight. So yes, you're hiring for strategy and capability and someone who can get you where you need to go next, but they have to connect and sort of be the same, cut from the same cloth when it comes from values, purpose, vision, so that they don't start being in conflict. And I think some of the early hires I didn't do enough on that. So you start developing some really good interview questions and reference checking and other things to just make sure you've got the right hire.
yeah,
Uh, but you want to hire people that have solved the challenges that you're going through, and they've got experience. I think we tend to promote a lot internally, which is really, really good, but sometimes you can do too much of that. And I think you always want to do that, and you should, but say you've got 5 key roles and you've promoted 4 of them internally, it's like, gee, like that's a lot that has to come off, and that's a lot of pressure on those internal promotions.
yeah,
So as an example, if you had 5 key roles that you need for growth, you probably want 3 of them being, or 2 or 3 at least, that are really experienced, who can support the team in this next phase that you're going into, and 1 or 2 of them can be promotions that then can benefit from that. But if you get too many, yeah,
yeah. I always say half the team needs to have seen the future, or
yeah, it's basic. Yeah, I've
it's
seen movies. I'm like, oh, this person's seen all the movies, but so
yeah,
a lot of people, if they're just growing their career, they're going to be great and they will solve the
yeah,
challenge. But whilst they're figuring it out, everyone else can be inadvertently suffering because they just haven't seen that movie. They don't know how it gets to the end and the script, and
yeah.
you know,
And
and
it's hardest the first time. It's
yes,
the reality, isn't it? When you're working it all out, it's no kind of quick shortcuts. Or interesting. Okay, so it sounds like that product, um, the kind of innovation level was one of your kind of challenges or chasms, if you like. What were the other breaking points or moments where just the growth engine conked, or and I ask this because I know every scale up has them. um,
yeah.
and how did you overcome them? Because I'm sure it's inspiring because you're doing well.
Yeah, I think one that emerges around, I don't know, 60, 80 staff is you start to have management, like, because you've got founders and you have a few leaders around you, and that's enough so that everyone has, I don't know, no more than 10, but preferably 6 to 8 direct reports. But at some point you're like, oh, hang on, we need managers. And then that management layer, when that kicks in, that changes a lot in a company, which if you're not aware of it, it takes a while to dawn on you what's happened and happening, and then how do we fix it. And it's a lot around communication flow up and down in the organization. And if you're a bit rash with your hiring, and like us, we operate in 6 locations around the world, so you've got different cultures and time zones, and you're not all in the same room. So the management layer, when you start to need to do that and introduce it, how to do that really well. And, that's something we learned is absolutely critical. And we've worked so hard on that over the years, and any effort we put into that really pays off. And I would say now I'm just so proud of the management team and the leadership team and how we work together, and it feels so much more cohesive.
Yep. What would be your advice if you've got that working well, to create that, to get beyond the leadership team and into I suppose I hate the term middle management. It sounds awful.
Yeah, it's bad. And the culture you don't want to end up with is us and them, and the managers protect their team and they don't want to fail, but then they also want to do a good job, but they get caught in the middle and they cascade bad. So
how did you make that work?
How do we make that work? I think one powerful influence was David Marquet's book Turn the Ship Around, where he introduced many things in there, but one was the ladder of leadership language. So that's not you tell people what to do. It's like, the leader should be, what do you think? What do you recommend? What do you intend to do? And asking those kind of questions of managers, and then listening to, what they think, or what they recommend, or what they intend to do. And that's also more inviting for them too, like at any time for them to say, I think the base level one is I see. And it's like, well, what do you see? And it's like, well, I see this. And then the next one's like, well, what do you think? What do you recommend? What do you intend to do? And so introducing that and actually working that through helps bridge the gap, and it makes things more approachable and less risk on both sides, and way less top down.
Yeah.
But then getting managers to ask their team, what do you think? What do you recommend? What do you see? And then you start developing a lot more influence and leadership at every level.
Yes. Nice. That's lovely. Don't know
I think architecting meetings, like monthly meeting or a weekly meeting where you all get together, being super transparent, and whatever you want managers to do, especially tough stuff, the leaders should go first. So the leaders should model mistakes and failure and learnings, and then like more is caught than taught. So that kind of model. The last thing is I'd say is on anything new where you want to, because this is where the big problem happened with management, where you go after a strategy, you innovate, there's opportunity, and now you've got to capture it. But a lot of the people that are now going to scale it, they weren't part of the innovation journey, but they've got their jobs to do, and they're not highly innovative anyway. But now, how do you get them on board and scale with them? That kind of model of, look, I'll do it with you. You watch me, then you do it. I'll watch you, and then you can do it. So leaders have to go down the organization and not just have plans and strategies and numbers and just get them back. Like you got to go. This is all obvious. I'm sure none of this is new news to your listeners, but these are the obvious lessons that the more that you do, the better you do it, the better the results. Like,
no, that's a love. I haven't heard more as caught than what was it? More as caught than
caught. Yeah.
Caught. That's it. Lovely.
Oh,
there's a good pedagogy to that too. Awesome. in terms of like, that's some awesome scaling lessons on how you got your company over those chasms. How about yourself? Like, obviously, from, startup to
Yeah.
60 to 200 people is a very different leadership style. Like, I mean, I got a company to 200. Like, how often I had to repeat myself sort of blew my mind. It's like you have to say it 50 times to get it through to half the team.
Yeah.
Tell me, and there's a million examples of kind of the things you need to do differently. What were your pinch points on that journey? What did you do to kind of change up your style, keep growing, changing your leadership style? Do you sort
Yeah.
of look back and see some points where you had to change up?
Yeah, constantly. So look, one would be like reading. I think reading some great books gives you the awareness, and some of them you'll read and you'll be like, "No, that won't happen to me." But then a year later or 2 years, you'll be like, "That thing I read a while ago, that's now happening to me." Like,
Yeah, fascinating.
so you're now aware of like things you should do. So like
Yeah,
I'd be a vivacious reader, like
yeah,
particularly around John Maxwell's 5 levels of leadership and,
yeah,
studying companies who messed it up. How did they mess it up? What are the typical problems? I
yeah.
got myself a leadership coach who was really good at
Right.
understanding my strengths and weaknesses and um, help, even observe me in the wild and
Nice.
give feedback,
Yeah.
positively, but also on development areas.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and probably the biggest thing I learned is just the power of, and I still fail at this more than I succeed, but he's putting things into great questions. So yes, you have to repeat yourself a lot, but it can be shortened somewhat if you say, hang on, like if I asked you to repeat back this strategy to me, how would you word it? And then when they have to word it back, sometimes it can give you confidence, go, oh wow, that's actually better said. You said that better than I did. Or maybe they missed a couple of key points in their
Yeah.
recollection. And then I'm like, oh, okay, you got everything right. I agree with, but you just didn't mention this bit. Why is that? That's not my natural driver style. But
Mm-hmm.
if I do that, it's a lot better. Um, and
Beautiful.
look, I think you've got to be curious and just get over yourself and realize that you don't have all the answers, and but you have to be confident that when you encounter a challenge, you can figure it out. And sometimes if you're going through a dark period, and there's that kind of the obstacle is the way, you're encountering this challenge for a reason. And that mindset of, you might say, well, I'm not good at that. But you just got to put 3 letters on the word on the end, which is yet. I'm not good at that yet. So it keeps you open to, like, and my mindset is, okay, this thing we now have to do. Who is the best in the world at this? And have they written a book on it? So I remember when we had to start setting strategy formally, and it's,
Yes.
well, someone comes in, you hire, and they go, well, what process do we use for annual planning and strategic planning? And I'm like, well, we kind of like, whatever we said
Together.
10 years ago. And I'm like, actually, we should have what are all the different approaches? And then you
Yeah.
study, and you find something you resonate with. And then, like for me, I read a book, Good Strategy, Bad Strategy, and the author, Richard Rummel, I really loved. So I wrote to him and said, listen, we're just starting to formalize the way we do this. And I like the principles in your book around good strategy, bad strategy, but I want to operationalize this. I want to put it in our DNA. And a lot of scaling is taking things that work and making them more process driven.
Yeah.
So making that a process, and then it's like, okay, great. And now, like, that naturally is what happens every year without me saying a word. However, I was, at some points mocked for how, that's when you've done a good job, when people start mocking you and go, yeah, yeah, we know you got to do a diagnosis first and outline the challenge to solve. And, it's like, yeah, you guys have got it now. But
Yeah.
there are a few. There are a few.
Yeah, nice. That's beautiful. I worked with Andrew Bassett, and actually been interviewed on this, and he always used to say for strategy, he's an amazing strategist, and he always used to say it's not the answer, it's the question. You know,
Yeah.
it's what problem we're trying to solve. It's the problem statement that matters much more, and it's so true. You can spend a lot of time on the wrong strategy, can you?
That's right. That's what you learn. Like, you've got to sharpen the axe and that strategy before you start swinging it at the tree, like,
Yeah. You're getting me on a day where I've been pulling a lot of wood on the weekend, so that
all right.
hurt you saying that. Yes. Okay. In terms of all those changes as you've grown, what was the most important thing not to change? You know, is there a special sauce you never going to change?
Not to change is like, you might label your values and you might figure out better words for them, but like if you get down to authentically who you are, like what drives you, what shaped the reason we co-founded the business. So what's in the DNA of the co-founders? What authentically, what do you stand for and passionate about? And also what would you never let, degrade? You never, it's impossible. I think that's when people get depressed, when you feel like you're not being who you really are, or you can't be, or you're not welcome, or it's not valuable. So, if you've done a good job, that'll be captured in your values and your mission. But
Yeah.
even if it's not, like being authentic on values is important.
Awesome. Awesome. I reckon that's it. I'll just ask you that one final thing. What is your top piece of advice for a scale-up CEO?
Uh,
Great
ask
advice today.
ask for help. You might pray about that. I certainly do that. But whatever you're going through, there's someone in the world that is absolutely brilliant at that, and they've got all the experience, and they would love to help you. You've just got to find them, and they'll encourage you as well. So ask for help. You're not alone, and you might not have figured it out yet.
That three-letter word at the end. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Sam, for sharing a whole lot of gold today. That was brilliant.
My pleasure. Thank you, Helen.